A freezing night, a wounded king of the underworld, and a girl with nothing but a torn scarf and a stubborn heart. She saves him under a church doorway. Then his enemies come hunting for the girl in the red coat. He takes her into his world for one night, but the doors lock from the inside. There's a secret hidden in her mother's old locket, numbers that could burn a city clean. A smiling billionaire wants those numbers. A good cop offers her a way out, but his badge might be for sale. Now the girl must choose. Trust the monster who protects her, or the heroes who might be lying. Guns rise, storms break. A vow is whispered. You're safe with me, even from me. If one small act of kindness can start a war, what will it cost to end it? Who's the real savior? The sinner who will bleed for her, or the saint who will sell her? And when the rain falls again, will she run from his world, or claim it as her own? The rain hammered against the pavement like angry fists, each drop another reminder of Mara's desperate situation. Her fingers clutched the fraying edge of her last dry blanket, trying to keep it from the rushing water in the gutter. The church's locked doors behind her offered no shelter, just another cold shoulder in a city full of them. The streetlight above flickered, casting unstable shadows across the wet stone steps. Mara pulled her red thrift store coat tighter, the thin material doing little against the biting wind. At least her umbrella, salvaged from a forgotten cafe table last week, gave her some protection from the deluge. The black sedan's engine roared before she saw it, cutting through the rain's white noise. The crack of gunshots split the air. 1, 2, 3 in rapid succession. Mara's heart leaped into her throat as she pressed herself against the church wall. A man stumbled into view, one hand pressed against his side. Even in the poor light, she could see the dark spread of blood seeping between his fingers, staining his expensive suit. He moved with purpose despite his injury, but his steps were growing unsteady. Without thinking, Mara moved. Years on the street had taught her to mind her own business, but something in his controlled movements, even while wounded, pulled her forward. She reached him just as his knees started to buckle. "Easy," she whispered, bracing his weight against her side. The umbrella tilted, sheltering them both as she guided him toward the church portico. "I've got you." His breath came in controlled bursts, too measured to be natural. Up close, she could see the sharp lines of his face, the steel in his gray eyes even through the pain. This was a dangerous man. Everything about him screamed power and control. Mara tore her worn scarf from her neck, folding it into a makeshift pressure bandage. "Hold still," she ordered, pressing it against his wound. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency. She'd done this before for others who couldn't go to hospitals. The sedan's engine growled as it circled the block. Mara pulled them deeper into the shadows of the portico, her body tense. The man, Kaspar, she would later learn, watched her with calculated intensity despite his injury. "Stay with me," she murmured, maintaining pressure on the wound. "Help's coming, right?" She knew his type. No one dressed like that, moved like that without backup. He nodded once, sharp and certain. The rain couldn't mask the approaching sound of multiple engines now. 3 black SUVs appeared, moving with military precision to block off both ends of the street. Men poured out, weapons ready, moving in formation to secure the area. Their efficiency spoke of years of training and absolute loyalty. They created a protective circle around Kaspar, and by extension, Mara. "Sir," one of them approached, his face hard but concerned. "Medical team is 3 minutes out." Kaspar's voice, when he spoke, carried authority even through the pain. "Secure the girl in the red coat. She's with us now." It wasn't a request, and his men moved immediately to include her in their protective formation. The black sedan made another pass, but this time the men's weapons tracked its movement. It disappeared into the night, outgunned and outnumbered. Sleet began mixing with the rain, the temperature dropping rapidly. Mara shivered, still pressing the blood-soaked scarf against Kaspar's side. She'd lost her umbrella in the chaos, and her thin coat offered little protection against the weather's turning fury. "You need medical attention too," Kaspar stated, his eyes noting her trembling hands and soaked clothing. When the unmarked medical transport arrived, he insisted, "You're coming with us." Mara hesitated. Street smarts screamed at her to run. Powerful men with gunshot wounds meant complications she couldn't afford. But the sedan was still out there, and the sleet was coating the sidewalks with treacherous ice. The promise of warmth and safety, even temporary, won out over caution. "Just until the weather clears," she conceded, allowing herself to be guided into the SUV's warm interior. The leather seats felt like luxury after weeks of concrete and cardboard. Kaspar sat beside her, his men efficiently arranging themselves for maximum protection. Despite his injury, he maintained perfect posture, as if refusing to show weakness. The vehicle moved smoothly into the night, heading for what he'd called a discreet clinic. Mara watched the city blur past the tinted windows, streetlights creating patterns on the wet glass. Her hands, still stained with Casper's blood, rested in her lap. The warmth of the car made her realize just how cold she'd been, how tired. In the close confines of the vehicle, she could smell his expensive cologne beneath the metallic scent of blood. His presence filled the space, controlled power, barely contained violence, and something else. Something in the way he'd looked at her when she'd stepped forward to help, as if he'd found something unexpected and valuable in the rain. The SUV's convoy moved through the city like a well-oiled machine, taking random turns to ensure they weren't followed. Mara noticed how the other vehicles maintained perfect formation, protecting their principal from all angles. These weren't just security, they moved like soldiers. She glanced at Casper again, finding him watching her with that same intense focus. His face betrayed no pain, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the slight rigidity in his shoulders. He was used to hiding weakness, to maintaining control no matter the cost. The sleet tapped against the windows like tiny bullets, creating an ironic percussion to their silent journey. Mara's soaked coat slowly dripped onto the expensive leather, but no one commented. They treated her as if she belonged there, following their boss's lead without question. The city lights continued their dance across the glass as they drove toward whatever fate awaited at the clinic. Mara felt the weight of decision settling around her like a heavy cloak. One moment of compassion in the rain had changed everything. She could feel it in her bones, in the way Casper's men positioned themselves to protect her too, in the calculated interest in his steel-gray eyes. The clinic's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across white-tiled walls, making everything feel sterile and exposed. Mara perched on a plastic chair, her soaked blanket pulled tight around her shoulders as water pooled beneath her feet. The smell of antiseptic couldn't quite mask the metallic scent of blood. The surgeon worked with practiced efficiency, his movements precise as he cleaned and stapled Caspar's wound. No questions asked, no paperwork filed. Exactly the kind of place that catered to men who couldn't risk hospital records. "Hold still," the surgeon muttered, though Casper hadn't moved a millimeter. His face remained impassive, but Mara noticed the slight tightening around his eyes with each staple. "You have identification?" Casper asked suddenly, his attention fixed on Mara despite the medical procedure. She shook her head. "Lost it months ago. Doesn't matter much when you're sleeping under church eaves." "The shelter. Too dangerous," she cut in. "The decent ones are always full, and the others..." She trailed off, pulling the damp blanket closer. "The church is safer. Father Michael turns a blind eye as long as we stay quiet." Casper's jaw tightened. When the surgeon finished, he stood, shrugging on a fresh shirt one of his men had brought. He pulled out a thick wallet, counting bills. "Take it," he said, extending the cash toward her. "Get yourself a room somewhere." Mara's chin lifted. "I don't need charity." "It's payment for the scarf." The scarf was worth maybe $5. Her eyes flicked to the surgeon. "But if you want to do something useful, have them launder your shirt. Blood's hard to clean once it sets." Casper studied her for a long moment, then nodded to one of his men, who took the bloodied shirt away. "At least let me drive you somewhere safer," he said. "The women's shelter on 10th. Mara hesitated, then nodded. It was still hours before dawn, and the sleet hadn't let up. The convoy moved through empty streets, windshield wipers fighting the frozen rain. Mara watched the city scroll past, noting how Casper's security detail maintained constant radio contact, reporting suspicious vehicles or movement. The first hint of dawn was barely touching the horizon when they approached the shelter. Mara saw it first, a motorcycle sliding into position behind them, followed by the same black sedan from earlier. "Down!" Casper's command came just as their driver accelerated, ramming the sedan that had tried to cut them off. The impact jolted through the vehicle. Casper moved with fluid efficiency, shoving Mara behind the seat while drawing a pistol. Glass shattered as bullets peppered the reinforced windows. He waited for a pause in the gunfire, then rolled down his window just enough to strike out. The crack of his pistol butt meeting skull was sickeningly loud. "Full extraction now!" His voice carried absolute authority. His men responded like a coordinated machine. 2 SUVs boxed in the motorcycle while another team disabled the sedan's remaining occupants. The violence was precise, professional. No wasted movement, no hesitation. In seconds, the threat was neutralized. Mara stayed low, her heart hammering against her ribs. She could smell cordite and fear sweat, hear the quick, efficient communications between Casper's men as they secured the scene. "Clear," came the report. "But they were waiting, sir. They knew the route." Casper's expression hardened. They weren't tracking us. They were tracking her. He turned to Mara. The shelter's compromised. We're relocating to secure accommodation. I can't, she started to protest. This isn't a discussion. His tone softened slightly. Someone wants you dead badly enough to risk coming after me. Until we know why, you're under my protection. The convoy changed direction, heading toward the expensive part of town. Mara watched Casper make calls, arranging security sweeps and background checks with quiet efficiency. His wound didn't seem to slow him down. If anything, the attack had energized him. They pulled up to a boutique hotel with discreet security and a private entrance. Casper's men swept the building while they waited in the vehicle, their practiced movements speaking of countless similar operations. Why help me? Mara finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Casper turned those steel-gray eyes on her. You didn't hesitate to help me, even knowing what I must be, what helping me might cost. He paused. That kind of loyalty deserves protection. The all-clear came, and Casper's team began their practiced escort formation. Mara felt the weight of the morning's events settling over her like a heavy blanket. In the space of a few hours, her world had shifted completely. The relative safety of her church doorway seemed very far away now. The hotel lobby was empty, except for a discreet clerk who didn't even look up as they passed. The elevator ride was silent, tense with unspoken questions. Casper's men positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the floor, while Casper himself led Mara to a suite. You'll be safe here, he said, checking the rooms himself before allowing her to enter. My men will guard the floor. Try to rest. Mara stood in the center of luxury she hadn't seen in years, her wet clothes creating puddles on imported carpet. The contrast between her current situation and where she'd been just hours ago was dizzying. Someone will bring you dry clothes, Caspar added, pausing at the door. We'll figure out who's targeting you and why. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried absolute certainty. No one threatens what's under my protection. Mara stood under the shower's scalding spray until her skin turned pink, watching dirt and blood swirl down the drain. The bathroom's marble and chrome gleamed with understated wealth, making her more aware of her own desperate state. She scrubbed herself raw with hotel soap, trying to wash away the night's violence. Wrapped in the softest robe she'd ever touched, she collapsed onto sheets that probably cost more than she'd made in a year. Sleep claimed her instantly, dreamless and heavy. A knock jolted her awake. Sunlight filtered through heavy curtains, casting the unfamiliar room in a gray glow. Her muscles ached from the night's tension. Room service! A woman's voice called, accent thick with Eastern European edges. Mara cracked the door to find a tall woman with sharp features and military bearing. She wore a tailored black suit and carried herself like someone who knew exactly how many ways to kill with ordinary objects. Ilona Weiss, she introduced herself, stepping aside to reveal a cart laden with covered dishes. Mr. Voss assigned me as your security detail. I didn't order breakfast, Mara said, but her stomach growled traitorously. Mr. Voss did. Ilona's expression didn't change as she swept the room with practiced efficiency. Eat. You'll need your strength. The food was simple but perfect. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and coffee that made Mara's eyes water with pleasure. She was halfway through when another knock announced Caspar's arrival. He looked immaculate in a fresh suit, but exhaustion haunted his eyes. The wounded predator from last night had been replaced by something more controlled, more dangerous. The ambush wasn't random, he said without preamble, settling into an armchair. They used you because everyone knows I pay my debts. Saving my life put you in their crosshairs. Mara set down her coffee. They'll try again? Through you. You're their softest target. His voice was matter-of-fact. Until I find the leak in my organization, you need to follow some rules. Rules, she echoed flatly. You don't leave the hotel. No phones, no outside contact. You go nowhere without Ilona, and you answer only to me. He leaned forward, intensity rolling off him in waves. This isn't negotiable. Mara met his gaze. Everything's negotiable. I want an end date, and when this is over, I want my freedom. No strings, no debt. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. We'll revisit that once the threat is neutralized. That's not good enough. It's all I can offer right now. He stood, buttoning his jacket. I don't make promises I can't keep. Ilona remained a silent presence by the door as Caspar outlined security protocols. The hotel's upper floors were already secured, staff vetted, cameras monitored. Mara listened with growing unease as she realized the extent of his influence. Hours crawled by. Mara paced the suite, watching boats on the gray river below. Ilona maintained her quiet vigilance, answering questions with minimal words but growing marginally less rigid as the day wore on. The afternoon light was fading when Caspar returned, his expression thunderous. He conferred with Ilona in low tones while Mara pretended not to watch their reflection in the window. "Pack whatever's been brought for you," he finally said. "We're moving." "Why?" "Security found a camera in the hallway, one that wasn't there this morning." His jaw tightened. "You're coming to my penthouse." "For how long?" "One night." He met her eyes. "Until I can arrange something more permanent." Mara felt the walls closing in, her old life, the church steps, the careful routines, the hard-won independence, was slipping away. Even if she walked away now, she'd always be looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next attempt. "One night," she heard herself say. Ilona efficiently packed the few items that had been delivered earlier, tucking a keycard into an inside pocket. Her movements were precise, professional, but Mara caught a flash of sympathy in her eyes. The suite suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Mara moved to the window, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Below, the river flowed on, indifferent to the choices being made above it. She watched a barge push against the current, fighting its way upstream with stubborn determination. "Ready?" Caspar's voice was quieter now, almost gentle. Mara nodded, turning away from the window. The room that had seemed so luxurious that morning now felt like a cage she was trading for a bigger one. But the alternative, running, hiding, waiting for the next attack, was worse. Ilona moved first, checking the hallway before signaling them forward. Caspar's hand settled at the small of Mara's back, warm through the borrowed sweater. The touch wasn't possessive, just protective, but it sent awareness skittering along her spine. The service elevator opened directly into a private garage. More of Caspar's men materialized from the shadows, forming a practiced formation around them. Mara noticed how they moved, fluid, coordinated, lethal. These weren't ordinary bodyguards. These were soldiers. The drive was short but tense. Mara watched the city lights blur past, trying to memorize the route even as she knew it was pointless. Her world had narrowed to wherever Caspar decided was safe, and fighting that would only get her killed. The penthouse garage was a fortress of concrete and steel, multiple security checkpoints scanning their vehicle before allowing entry. Mara caught glimpses of cameras, armed guards, and what looked like military-grade equipment before Caspar guided her to another elevator. Ilona took up position behind them, her presence both reassuring and reminder that there was no going back. The keycard in her pocket might as well have been a set of golden handcuffs. The elevator doors opened to sleek darkness. Motion sensors awakened soft lighting that spilled across polished floors, illuminating a space that seemed to float above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the penthouse in night sky, while mirrored corridors reflected endless iterations of Mara's uncertain expression. "The kitchen's through there," Caspar indicated with a slight nod. "Your room is down the east wing. Ilona will show you." Mara's footsteps echoed in the hushed space. Everything gleamed with the cold perfection of a museum, pristine and untouchable. The air hummed with invisible security systems, cameras tracking their movement with mechanical precision. But then she saw it, an incongruous splash of green visible through glass panels overhead. A greenhouse crowned the penthouse, its panels clouded with condensation from misting hoses that created a gentle percussion in the silence. "You should rest," Caspar said, but Mara was already moving toward the spiral staircase that led upward. The greenhouse air enveloped her in humid warmth, heavy with the scent of wet earth and growing things. Tropical plants crowded the space, their leaves pressing against glass walls that opened to the night sky. Water droplets clung to broad leaves and delicate petals, catching the city lights like scattered stars. She didn't hear Caspar follow, but suddenly he was there, moving between the plants with practiced familiarity. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms as he reached for pruning shears. "The cold gets in despite the heaters," he said, snipping away frostbitten leaves. "Nature doesn't bow to command." Mara watched his hands move with surprising gentleness among the plants. "Is that why you keep them? Because they won't obey?" His lips quirked slightly. "Perhaps." He examined a leaf before continuing. "Everything else in my world operates on orders and consequences. These," he gestured to the surrounding greenery, "these simply are." The misting system activated again, filling the air with fine droplets. Mara closed her eyes, letting the moisture settle on her skin. When she opened them, Caspar was watching her with an unreadable expression. "Dinner?" he asked, setting down the shears. The kitchen is always stocked. I'd like that. They descended to the main level where Ilona had materialized, silent as a shadow. Caspar disappeared briefly, returning with something folded in his hands, her scarf, cleaned and pressed, the bloodstains erased as if they'd never existed. He offered it without comment. Mara's fingers brushed his as she took it. Thank you. She touched the locket at her throat, a habitual gesture of comfort. This was my mother's, she found herself saying. The hinge keeps breaking, but I can't bear to replace it. I've had it repaired so many times the jeweler knows me by name. Caspar stepped closer, studying the delicate silver oval. May I? She nodded, holding still as his fingers gently lifted the locket. His touch was careful, clinical almost, as he examined the worn hinge. I know someone who could... He stopped abruptly, his attention shifting to something behind her. Mara turned. The security wall had come alive with scrolling data, but something was wrong. Red text blazed across the screens. She saw us! The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Caspar's expression hardened to granite as he strode to a panel, fingers flying over the controls. The camera feed was compromised. Someone looped the security footage. An inside job, Ilona said quietly. Double the guard rotation, Caspar ordered. Full sweeps every 30 minutes. No one enters or leaves without direct authorization. His voice was controlled, but Mara saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hand had shifted closer to his concealed weapon. Ilona moved with efficient purpose, speaking rapid instructions into her comm unit. Guards materialized from hidden posts, their movements precise and practiced as they took up new positions. You'll sleep in the east wing, Caspar told Mara. Ilona will be outside your door. His tone left no room for argument. And you? He glanced toward the greenhouse overhead. I'll keep watch from up there, better sight lines. Mara wanted to object. To what, she wasn't sure. The protection, the imprisonment, the way he'd shifted from almost warm to tactical coldness in the space of a heartbeat. But the red message still glowed on the screens, a digital threat she couldn't ignore. Ilona led her down the mirrored corridor to a bedroom larger than any apartment she'd ever had. The windows were bulletproof, the doors reinforced steel beneath their elegant veneer. Every comfort was also a fortress wall. Above, through the greenhouse glass, she could see Caspar's silhouette against the city lights. He sat motionless in a chair, positioned for maximum visibility, gun within easy reach. The misting system activated again, rain-like drops pattering against the glass as he maintained his vigil. Mara closed her door, hearing Ilona take up position outside. The room's luxury pressed in around her. Silk sheets, plush, carpets, art that probably cost more than she'd ever earned. But all she could think about was Caspar in his garden of living things, admitting that some power lay beyond his control, and now watching over her through the rain-streaked glass, while unseen enemies plotted in the darkness below. Dawn crept through the basement windows of Caspar's tech lab, casting blue shadows across banks of humming servers. Lev hunched over his workstation, caffeine-dark eyes fixed on the delicate silver locket suspended in a microvise, his restless hands steadied as he manipulated precision tools. The hinge is compromised anyway, he muttered, more to himself than to Mara, who stood watching, arms crossed tight. Might as well see what's making it stick. Caspar leaned against a steel desk, his presence filling the sterile room. He'd brought them down here the moment the sun rose, insisting the locket needed inspection after last night's security breach. The tiny screwdriver slipped, and Lev swore under his breath. Sorry, just need to... There. The locket's backing separated with a soft click. Mara stepped closer, drawn by the familiar sight of the worn photos inside, her mother's smile frozen in time. But Lev wasn't looking at the pictures. His fingers traced the exposed hinge mechanism, pausing at an almost invisible seam. Well, hello, he whispered. What are you hiding? With surgical precision, he teased apart the metal layers. Something thin and metallic glinted under the work lights, a wafer-thin plate no larger than a fingernail. It's not a tracker, Lev announced, examining it under a magnifier. It's... Jesus. This is military-grade micro-etching. The whole plate is covered in code. Mara's hand flew to her throat where the locket usually rested. That's impossible. I never knew. Your mother left it there, Caspar said quietly. It wasn't a question. Lev was already typing, his screens filling with cascading numbers. The code format is old, maybe 15 years. It's pointing to... Got it. An offshore server. Dead now, but I can pull ghost data. His fingers flew across multiple keyboards. The server was registered to a Diana Maxwell. My mother's maiden name, Mara breathed. More screens lit up as Lev dug deeper. The code is an access key. Whatever she was protecting, she wanted someone to find it eventually. He glanced at Mara. Or maybe she wanted you to find it. Hours passed in a blur of technical jargon and data streams. Lev worked with fierce concentration, breaking through layers of encryption, while Caspar made quiet phone calls in the corner. Mara paced, her mind spinning with possibilities. By late morning, the pieces started falling into place. "It's a ledger," Lev announced, pointing to columns of numbers and names. Shell companies, numbered accounts, payment schedules to government officials. He whistled low. "This is enough to destroy someone's entire operation, multiple someones." Caspar moved to study the screen, his expression hardening. "Cross-reference those shell companies. Look for any still active." "Already on it." Lev's monitors flashed with new data. "Most are dead ends, but wait." He isolated one stream of information. "This pattern, it's current. The same structure is being used by—" He stopped, glancing at Caspar. "Say it." "Galen Price, the real estate developer." Lev's voice was careful. "He's using the exact same laundering setup as these old accounts. Has to be more than coincidence." Caspar's jaw tightened. "Price?" "Of course." He turned to Mara. "He's been laundering money for my oldest rival for years, hiding blood money behind legitimate businesses and charity foundations." "My mother's locket. It could expose him?" Mara asked. "It could expose his entire network. The officials he's paying, the shell companies, everything." Caspar met her eyes. "I won't use this without your consent. Lev, copy everything to an air-gapped drive. Nothing touches the network." Lev nodded, already setting up the transfer. "What about the original?" He gestured to the microplate. "Put it back," Mara said firmly. "It stays with me." They watched as Lev reassembled the locket with painstaking care, his clever hands returning it to its original state. Only now the hinge moved smoothly, its secret burden properly seated. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows as Mara fastened the chain around her neck. The familiar weight felt different now, heavy with new meaning. "They'll come for you," Caspar said quietly. "Now that they know you have the key to destroying them." Mara lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "If I'm the key," she said steadily, "then I get to decide which door we open first." The locket rested against her collarbone, warm from her skin. 15 years of secrets, hidden right against her heart. Her mother's final message, waiting all this time to be found. Now the choice was hers. Which empire to topple, which truth to reveal. Lev cleared his throat. "I've got the decryption sequence isolated. We can start unraveling specific threads whenever you're ready." His screen still scrolled with data, each line a potential weapon. Caspar watched her, his expression unreadable. The power had shifted, however, slightly. She held something now that even he couldn't simply take or command. "Whatever you decide," he said finally, "we'll need to move carefully. Price's reputation for civility is a mask. He destroys people through perfectly legal means. Foreclosures, audits, character assassination. By the time anyone realizes it's murder, the paperwork's already filed." Mara touched the locket again, feeling its subtle weight. "My mother knew. She must have found proof of what he was doing." The pieces were starting to align: her mother's sudden death, the missing relief shipments she'd been investigating, the suspicious accident report that never quite made sense. "The data's at least 15 years old," Lev reminded them, still typing. "But the patterns are identical. Price hasn't changed his methods, just updated the technology. Your mother found his blueprint." He looked up at Mara. "And now you have it." Mara sat at Caspar's sleek kitchen island, her fingers tracing the cool marble as afternoon light spilled through the greenhouse windows. The terms of their arrangement hung in the air between them. "I'll help decode the ledger," she said firmly. "But I won't become another piece in your empire. When this is over, I walk away clean." Caspar stood opposite her, his presence commanding even in casual clothes. "You'll have your freedom," he agreed, "after Price is dealt with, but until then, you follow every security protocol without question. Define dealt with. Ashes." His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Nothing less will guarantee your safety." Ilona entered, her tactical gear a stark contrast to the luxury kitchen. "Time for evacuation drills," she announced, giving Mara an appraising look. 3 exits, 30 seconds each. Let's see what you got." For the next hour, Ilona drove Mara through escape routes, through the service elevator, down the fire stairs, across the underground garage. Each run got faster as muscle memory built. "Again," Ilona commanded after Mara cleared the garage exit, this time blindfolded. By late afternoon, Kaspar received an urgent call. A local shopkeeper, voice trembling, begging for help. They loaded into the SUV, Mara included, because leaving her alone wasn't an option. The shop was a small grocery in a worn neighborhood. Through the SUV's tinted windows, Mara watched a scene unfold like theater. A burly man threatening the elderly shopkeeper, demanding protection money that hadn't been authorized. Kaspar emerged from the car, his movements precise. The collector turned, recognition flickering across his face too late. What followed was a demonstration in controlled violence. Kaspar never drew a weapon. He didn't need to. 3 moves, an arm lock that dropped the collector to his knees, a precise strike to the solar plexus that left him gasping, and a final twist that had the man crawling away, thoroughly defeated, but alive. The shopkeeper burst into tears, bowing repeatedly as Kaspar spoke quietly to him. No threats, no demands, just a gentle pat on the shoulder and what looked like a business card pressed into weathered hands. Back at the penthouse, as evening settled over the city, Mara found Kaspar in the greenhouse. Plants breathed quiet green life around them as she asked the question that had been burning since the shop. Why did you let him live? The collector. Kaspar pruned a dying leaf with careful fingers. Terror without purpose is weakness, he said. That man was a dog marking territory he didn't own. Killing him would have been... He paused, considering. Wasteful. Sometimes mercy makes a stronger statement than murder. Is that what you showed me? Mercy as power? I showed you who I am. He set down the pruning shears. Someone who uses exactly as much force as necessary, no more. Mara stepped closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. I'm still afraid of you, she admitted. But that doesn't cancel out being grateful. His eyes darkened as he turned to face her. Fear doesn't cancel desire either. The air between them crackled with possibility. Mara's breath caught as Kaspar took one deliberate step back, maintaining the distance she hadn't chosen to close. I'll be in my office, he said quietly and left her alone with the misting plants and her thundering heart. Hours later, Lev's excited voice echoed through the intercom. Boss, we've got something! They gathered in the tech lab, where multiple screens displayed cascading data. Lev's fingers flew across keyboards as he explained. One of the shell companies is still active. Really active. Scheduled to move a massive amount of funds during the Maritime Heritage Gala. When? Kaspar demanded. 48 hours. It's one of those fancy charity events at the oceanfront. Perfect cover for a major transaction. Mara studied the scrolling numbers. These amounts, they're identical to the pattern in my mother's records. Same shell company structure, same transfer protocols, Lev confirmed. They're using a 15-year-old playbook because it worked so well the first time. Kaspar's expression hardened. The gala will be heavily secured, guest list only with private security supplementing hotel staff. I can get us the guest manifest, Ilona offered from her position by the door. Do it. Kaspar turned to Mara. This is our chance to catch them in the act, but it means putting you in their crosshairs. I'm already in their crosshairs, she pointed out. At least this way we choose the battlefield. Lev pulled up blueprints of the oceanfront hotel. The ballroom has 3 main exits, plus service corridors. If we can access their secure network during the event. We can track the transfer in real time, Mara finished. Use their own system to document the crime. It's risky, Ilona warned. That many civilians, that much security, a lot of variables. Which is exactly why they chose it, Kaspar said. No one expects a takedown at a charity gala. He studied the hotel layout. We'll need covers, acceptable reasons to be there. Donors, Ilona suggested. Deep pockets open a lot of doors. Mara touched her locket, its weight familiar against her collarbone. Whatever we do, we have to be certain. One chance to get this right. We'll have 24 hours to plan, Kaspar said. Every detail, every contingency. He looked at each of them in turn. No mistakes, no loose ends. The screens continued their endless scroll of data as they began to build their strategy. Outside, the city lights sparkled against a velvet sky, while inside this fortress, 4 people plotted to spring a trap, 15 years in the making. Morning light filtered through frosted clinic windows as a nurse checked Mara's vitals. The sterile smell of antiseptic made her nose wrinkle, but at least this place was legitimate, unlike the back alley clinic where she'd first watched Kaspar get stitched up. Blood pressure's good, the nurse said, unwrapping the cuff. Doctor will be in shortly. Ilona stood by the door, alert as always. I need to sign some insurance forms. 5 minutes. Her eyes swept the hallway before she stepped out. The moment her footsteps faded, a man in a rumpled suit appeared in the doorway. Detective Carl Benton's badge glinted as he pulled up a chair, too close for comfort. "Miss Hale." His voice carried fake warmth. "We need to talk." He spread photos across the exam table like dealing cards. Crime scenes, bodies, newspaper headlines screaming about mob violence. Casper's name featured prominently. "This is what he does," Benton said. "What he is! But you already know that, don't you?" Mara's throat tightened. "What do you want?" "To offer you a way out." He leaned forward. "The Maritime Gala. We know there's a meeting planned. Wear a wire, get Casper talking about that ledger, and you walk away clean. Witness protection, fresh start, the works. And if I refuse? And you're an accessory when it all burns down." He tapped one particularly gruesome photo. "And it will burn down. You think that first hit was random? Please." Casper orchestrated it himself, oldest trick in the book. Create a threat, play hero, gain trust. Mara kept her face neutral, but her mind raced. Could he be right? The timing had been convenient. "Think about it," Benton pressed. "But don't think too long. Offer expires when the gala starts." He slipped her a burner phone, then vanished as quickly as he'd appeared. Mara shoved the phone into her pocket just as Ilona returned. Her hands shook as she signed her own forms, Benton's words echoing. The ride back to the penthouse stretched endless. She should tell Casper about Benton's approach. But what if the detective was dirty? What if he was working for Price? What if he was right about Casper? The guilt of keeping secrets churned her stomach, but she forced herself to focus on immediate concerns. They had a cover story to perfect before tomorrow night. "Again," Casper said that evening, studying her from across his office. "How did we meet?" Mara smoothed her borrowed dress, a simple black number for practice. "You literally ran into me at the Modern Art Museum fundraiser last month. Spilled champagne all over my dress. And you insisted on replacing it. Took me shopping the next day." She rolled her eyes. "Because apparently buying me one dress wasn't enough to ease your guilty conscience." "Good." Casper's lips twitched. "Tell me about the painting we discussed." "The Kandinsky in the East Wing. I said the composition felt unstable, like everything could slide off the canvas at any moment. You said that was exactly why you liked it. The tension between chaos and control." "Your body language when you mentioned the painting?" "Relaxed, leaning in, genuine interest," she demonstrated, then laughed. "Though I still think abstract expressionism is overrated." "That's perfect. Keep that natural disdain. It makes the story more believable." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "What else?" 3 dinner dates since then. Nothing too public, nothing too private. Building trust slowly because we both have trust issues. "And tomorrow night is our first official public appearance. You're introducing me to your business associates because things are getting serious." She gave him a pointed look. "Though not too serious. I'm independent, career-focused, not looking to be anyone's arm candy." "Excellent." He stood, closing the distance between them. "Now show me how you'll react when I do this." His fingers brushed her elbow, a seemingly casual touch that sent electricity through her skin. Mara forced herself to lean into it slightly, like someone growing comfortable with intimacy. "Natural instinct," he murmured. "Use it. The best lies contain truth." She met his gaze. "And what truth are we using?" The air grew thick with unspoken things. Before he could answer, Ilona appeared in the doorway with a sleek clutch purse. "Final equipment check," she announced, breaking the moment. She pulled out a slim silver device the size of a credit card. "Panic button. Silent alarm linked directly to me. Range is 50 meters, works through walls." Mara took it, noting the subtle texture that would let her find it by touch. "I'll be within 30 steps of you all night," Ilona continued, showing her optimal placement in the purse. "Even when you can't see me. 1 press brings immediate extraction. 2 presses, we go loud. Full tactical response." "And 3 presses?" Mara asked. "Nuclear option. Every exit blocked, every player locked down. No questions asked." Ilona's eyes were steel. "Choose carefully." Mara nodded, tucking the device away. Her fingers brushed Benton's burner phone, and fresh guilt surged. The weight of secrets and choices pressed down like lead. "Try to sleep," Casper said softly. "Tomorrow will be long enough, without exhaustion clouding your judgment." She wanted to tell him everything then, about Benton, about her doubts, about the fear and attraction warring in her chest. Instead, she nodded and turned to go, feeling his eyes follow her down the hall. In her room, she stared at the burner phone, then at her mother's locket. Somewhere in the tangle of lies and truth lay the answers she needed. She just hoped she'd recognize them when she saw them. Twilight painted the coast in watercolor grays as their convoy wound down the private drive. The safe house perched on weathered stilts, modern lines softened by salt air and constant wind. Waves whispered against the shore below, offering a privacy neither had anticipated. Mara stepped onto the deck, letting the sea spray kiss her face while Caspar cleared the perimeter. The isolation felt deliberate. No staff, no guards, just Ilona's car disappearing around the bend to set up surveillance points. "We should run through the approach again," Caspar said, appearing beside her. His shoulder brushed hers, casual but electric. She turned to face him, conscious of how the fading light carved shadows beneath his cheekbones. "Show me." His hand settled on her waist, warm through her sweater. "When we enter, you'll be on my left. I'll guide you with small touches. Here." His fingers pressed gently. "And here." He traced her spine. "Like this?" She leaned into his touch, demonstration becoming something more. "Yes." His voice roughened, but slower. Build the anticipation. She reached up to straighten his tie, letting her fingers linger. "How's that for anticipation?" Instead of answering, he caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. The gesture undid her, so tender it ached. Caspar. His name was both question and answer. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her skin. "No." The kiss was inevitable, necessary as breathing. He cradled her face like she was precious, dangerous, salvation itself. She wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer as the wind tangled their clothes. "Inside," she gasped between kisses. "Please?" He lifted her, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her through the sliding glass door. Each step was careful, controlled, even as desire made his hands shake. "Are you sure?" he asked, setting her down beside the bed. "Yes." She pulled him down for another kiss. "But you have to be sure too." "I've never been more certain of anything." He touched her cheek. "Or more terrified of losing it." They undressed each other slowly, reverent. Every touch was a question asked and answered. His fingers traced her scars like reading Braille. She mapped the stories written in his skin, bullet wounds, knife fights, a life of violence softened only here, only now. When he finally moved inside her, it was with such careful worship that tears pricked her eyes. She arched up to meet him, drawing him deeper, closer, until there was no space left for doubt or fear or anything but this. After, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled of salt air, her head on his chest while he stroked her hair. The confession came in the darkness, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. "I killed my best friend," he said. "Marcus. We grew up together, trained together. He was planning a coup that would have started a war, so I put 3 bullets in his chest and watched him die." Mara didn't flinch. "When?" 5 years ago, the night I took control." She traced the scar over his heart. Old, puckered, a failed assassination attempt. "You're telling me this now because you deserve to know exactly who you're trusting." His fingers stilled in her hair. "And because I need you to understand that I will do whatever necessary to keep you safe." She pushed up on one elbow to meet his eyes. "Benton?" "Approached me at the clinic, offered immunity if I'd wear a wire tomorrow night, record you discussing the ledger." "And you're telling me now because I don't know who he really works for, and because—" She touched his face. "Because I trust you, even knowing what you are, what you've done." He pulled her closer, pressing his lips to her forehead. "You're safe with me," he whispered. "Even from me." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's rhythms until pleasure crested like waves against the shore. Afterward, as false dawn pearled the horizon, they set the parameters for the gala. "You handle the social game," he said, watching her dress. "I'll control the exits. If anything feels wrong—" 3 taps on the panic button, she finished. "Nuclear option. And if Benton shows—" "I don't see him, don't know him. Keep playing our cover story." He nodded, adjusting his cuffs. "Ready?" The drive back to the city was quiet, comfortable. They'd found alignment in more ways than one. Mara watched the coastline fade in the rearview mirror, Ilona's headlights steady behind them. Casper's hand found hers across the console. She laced their fingers together, feeling the calluses on his trigger finger, the strength held carefully in check. The sun broke over the horizon as they hit city limits, painting everything in gold. Mara squeezed his hand, and he squeezed back. A silent promise, a chosen trust. They had 12 hours until the gala, 12 hours to prepare for whatever came next. But for now, in this moment between night and day, they were simply two people who had found something worth protecting. The city rose around them like a fortress of glass and steel. Casper's thumb traced circles on her palm as they wound through early morning traffic. In the rearview mirror, Ilona maintained her watchful distance. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Everything important had already been said in touches and truths and choices made in darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it together, the crime lord and the woman who chose him, eyes wide open. The safe house disappeared behind them like a dream, but its effects lingered in the way they moved around each other now, aligned, connected, ready. Morning light gilded the streets as they made their final turn toward the penthouse. A new day dawning, full of promise and danger in equal measure. But for now, in this quiet moment between what was and what would be, they had found their truth in each other. The seaside gala sparkled like broken glass, strings of lights casting prismatic shadows across marble floors. Mara's silk dress whispered against her legs as she moved through the crowd, every step calculated, every smile measured. Her heart thundered beneath the composed exterior she'd practiced with Casper. Peder Holm materialized exactly as predicted. Sharp suit, shark's smile, dead eyes. He approached with practiced ease, as if their meeting was purely coincidental. Just as they'd rehearsed, Mara laughed at his opening line about the wine selection, letting her body language invite closer conversation. "The view from the balcony is extraordinary," she suggested, gesturing toward the glass doors. From the corner of her eye, she caught Ilona's shadow sliding into position, two more of Kaspar's men adjusting their angles to maintain clear sightlines. The salt air hit her face as they stepped outside. Holm waited 3 precise beats before producing his phone. "Speaking of extraordinary views," he said, his voice oily with false warmth, "I have something that might interest your employer." The floor plans that appeared on his screen made her blood run cold. These weren't the publicly available renovation permits. These showed security nodes, camera blind spots, the exact layout of Casper's private level. Only someone with direct access to the inner system could have obtained them. "Impressive," she said, forcing her tone to stay light. "Though I'm not sure what you expect me to do with architectural drawings." "Oh, I think we both know exactly what they're worth." Holmes' smile didn't reach his eyes. "A small sample from that interesting ledger of yours would make for a fair trade." Movement in the service court below caught her attention. A black van pulled up, its side door sliding open with deliberate silence. Masked figures emerged like smoke. Mara's fingers brushed her panic button, but before she could press it, gunshots cracked the night. Silenced, but distinctive. Casper materialized from the shadows, dropping 3 attackers with surgical precision. Each shot found its mark with terrible efficiency. Holmes' hand clamped around her arm, but Ilona was faster. The bodyguard appeared like an avenging angel, breaking his grip with a twist that made him grunt in pain. Mara was already moving, her heels clicking against marble as they sprinted for the kitchen exit. The service corridors were a maze, but Ilona navigated them with unwavering certainty. They emerged into the cool night where an unmarked car waited, engine running. Mara slid into the back seat, her heart hammering against her ribs. Casper joined them moments later, his face carved from stone. The drive back to the penthouse passed in taut silence. Mara watched the city blur past, her mind racing through implications. The floor plans, the coordinated attack, the precise timing. This wasn't just a leak. This was betrayal from inside Casper's inner circle. An hour later, she stood in Casper's office as he systematically dismantled his lieutenant's lies. The man, Victor, had been with the organization for 15 years. He'd arranged Mara's clinic appointment, known her schedule, had access to the security systems. "Tell me again," Casper said, his voice soft as a blade. "Exactly when you learned about the clinic visit." Victor's story crumbled under questioning. Each contradiction exposed another thread of deception until the whole fabric unraveled. He'd sold information, not just about Mara, but about operations going back months. Mara expected violence. In their world, betrayal meant death. But Casper surprised her. "You're stripped," he announced. "Assets frozen, accounts emptied, connections severed. Leave the city by morning." The color drained from Victor's face. In their circle, exile was worse than death. It meant surviving without resources, without protection, knowing every enemy you'd ever made could find you. "Boss, please!" Victor started. "You're alive because you were useful once," Kaspar cut him off. "That debt is paid. Now get out!" 2 guards appeared to escort Victor away. Mara watched him stumble toward the elevator, a dead man walking. When the doors closed, she turned to Kaspar. "Why not kill him?" "Death is quick," Kaspar said, straightening papers on his desk. "This way, he serves as a warning. Every time someone sees him scraping by in some backwater, they'll remember the price of betrayal." It wasn't mercy, Mara realized. It was mathematics. The elegant geometry of power and consequence calculated for maximum effect. Kaspar hadn't gone soft. He'd simply found the most efficient solution. In the silence that followed, Mara studied him. His hands were steady as he worked, no trace of the violence from earlier visible in his movements. But she'd seen him drop those men without hesitation, had witnessed the cold precision of his retribution against Victor. The contrast should have frightened her. Instead, she found herself oddly comforted by his control. He wielded power like a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Even his punishments were measured, purposeful. Ilona appeared in the doorway with security reports. The cleanup crew had removed all traces of the incident at the gala. Holm had vanished into the night, but his phone had been recovered, cracked but potentially useful. "Lev's working on it now," Ilona reported. "Preliminary analysis shows connections to at least 3 shell companies we've been tracking." Kaspar nodded, his focus already shifting to next steps. Mara watched him work, seeing clearly now how each decision connected to the next, forming patterns as precise as the security schematics Holm had shown her. The night's events had revealed the true architecture of Kaspar's world. Not the brutal chaos outsiders imagined, but a careful balance of force and restraint, each action calculated for maximum impact. It wasn't softness that stayed his hand with Victor. It was strategy, pure and clean as mathematics. Morning light filtered through the greenhouse glass as Lev's fingers flew across his keyboard. Screens reflected in his dark eyes as strings of code resolved into readable text. Mara stood behind him, one hand pressed against her mother's locket, while Kaspar watched from the doorway. "Got it," Lev announced, his voice tight. "The encryption's broken." Names and numbers filled the screen. Price's signature appeared on wire. Transfers, Holmes' aliases threaded through shell companies, government officials, judges, port authorities, all linked by careful streams of money. But it was an older entry that stopped Mara's breath. 3 years ago, a series of payments had authorized the redistribution of relief supplies meant for her district. Medical supplies, food, basic necessities, all diverted through dummy corporations connected to Kaspar's organization. The same month her mother had gotten sick. The same supplies that could have saved her. "These shipments," Mara said, her finger trembling as she pointed to the screen. "They were meant for the South District clinics." Lev scrolled through the data, his expression grim. Multiple shipments, all redirected through front companies, then sold overseas for profit. The room seemed to tilt. Mara's hands shook as she gripped the back of Lev's chair. Everything she'd built with Kaspar, the trust, the connection, the careful hope, cracked like thin ice. "Did you know?" She turned to Kaspar, her voice raw. "When you found me that night, did you know who I was? What your organization had done?" "No." Kaspar's face was stone, but his eyes held a shadow of something deeper. "I didn't know then, and I didn't authorize those diversions. But your name is there, your organization." "Yes." He didn't try to dodge the weight of it. "It happened under my banner, which makes it my responsibility, even if I didn't know." "Responsibility?" Mara laughed, the sound brittle. "My mother died waiting for medicine that never came. The whole district collapsed while those supplies were being sold for profit. You can't just—" She broke off, pressing her hands to her temples. Kaspar took a step forward. "Let me make it right." "Make it right." The words tasted like ash. "There's no making this right." Ilona appeared in the doorway, alert to the tension. "Mara!" But Mara was already moving. She grabbed the air-gapped drive from Lev's desk, tucking it into her coat pocket. No one tried to stop her. They didn't need to. She was already caged by the truth. She walked past Kaspar without meeting his eyes, past Ilona's worried frown, through the silent corridors of the penthouse that had almost started feeling like safety. The elevator carried her down to the lobby. Outside, the city bustled, oblivious to how her world had just shattered. She walked 6 blocks before finding a payphone that still worked. Detective Benton answered on the second ring. "I have the ledger," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside. "Complete decryption. Names, dates, accounts, everything you need to take down Price's operation." "And Casper's," Benton added softly. "All of it." Mara pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the phone booth. "I want immunity, complete protection from everyone involved." "Of course!" His tone was gentle, understanding. "We can arrange a meeting, somewhere public but controlled." They settled on the municipal parking garage near the courthouse. 7 p.m., upper level. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Mara walked the city streets, avoiding cameras, staying in motion. The drive felt heavy in her pocket. Heavier still was the memory of Casper's face when the truth emerged. Not defensive, not angry, just grimly accepting the weight of actions done in his name. The parking garage loomed gray against the darkening sky. Mara took the stairs, her footsteps echoing in the concrete stairwell. The upper level was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered under fluorescent lights. Benton waited by a support pillar, hands in his pockets. He looked exactly like what he pretended to be, a tired detective trying to do the right thing. "You came alone?" she asked, stopping several feet away. "As promised." He smiled, that gentle, trustworthy smile. "Do you have it?" Mara patted her coat pocket. "Immunity first. I want it in writing." "Of course." He reached into his jacket, and Holmes stepped out from behind a van, followed by 2 more men with hard eyes and empty faces. The truth clicked into place with terrible clarity. Benton's careful cultivation of trust, his timely appearance at the clinic, the way he'd known exactly what to say to shake her faith in Casper. "You work for Price," she said flatly. "Smart girl." Benton's smile turned sharp, but a little slow on the uptake. "We've been watching you since before Casper found you. That night in the rain? Not an accident." The betrayal was almost elegant in its simplicity. They'd used her mother's death, Price's own crime, to turn her against the one person who might have helped her expose it all. Rough hands grabbed her arms. She tried to twist away, but they were ready for resistance. A canvas sack descended over her head, filling her world with darkness. Through the fabric, she heard Holmes' voice. "Got it!" The drive sliding free from her pocket. The sound of footsteps moving away. The last thing she registered was Benton's voice, almost apologetic. "Nothing personal, Ms. Hale. Just business." Then something hard struck the back of her head, and even the darkness went dark. The city light sparkled far below through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Price's unfinished tower. Mara tested the zip ties binding her wrist to the office chair, feeling plastic bite into her skin. The glass-walled office offered a perfect view of the ballroom 40 stories below, where caterers arranged champagne towers and string musicians tuned their instruments. Price adjusted his bow tie in the reflection, a tall man with silver temples and cold eyes. "You'll have the best seat in the house, Ms. Hale. A shame you won't be joining us properly." "They'll know the ledger's fake," Mara said, keeping her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Will they?" Price turned, smiling thinly. "A desperate homeless woman steals data, tries to blackmail legitimate businessmen, then tragically loses her grip on reality, and her grip on the balcony rail. Such a sad story." Benton lounged against the doorframe, checking his watch. "Press arrives in an hour. Everything's set for the midnight schedule." "Good." Price straightened his cuffs. "Handle it quietly, Carl. No mess." "Always do, sir." Benton's false sympathy had vanished, replaced by flat professionalism. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving Mara alone with 2 guards and the glittering view of her planned death scene. Back at the penthouse, Ilona burst through the door, still in her tactical gear. "They have her! Benton was working for Price all along!" Casper went perfectly still, a predator scenting blood. Then he exploded into motion, fingers flying across his phone. "Shut down the docks! All of them! Flip every safe house we have! I want eyes on that tower!" His network responded instantly. Across the city, lights began going dark at the waterfront. Security cameras swiveled toward Price's tower. Safe houses emptied of their occupants, leaving only cold rooms and burned phones. "Get me Agent Chen," Casper ordered, his voice arctic. "The real federal task force." Minutes later, Chen's skeptical voice filled the speaker. "This better be good, Voss. I'm offering you everything, full cooperation, the complete ledger, decryption keys. But I want Mara Hale extracted and granted full immunity first." "That's not how this works." "Then watch how it does work," Casper nodded to Lev, who hit a key. Across town, 2 warehouses erupted in flames, empty of people but full of evidence. On the highway, 3 unmarked SUVs boxed in a money courier's car. And on Chen's phone, a live feed appeared, home counting stacks of marked bills that would lead straight back to Price's operation. "I can burn it all down," Caspar said softly. "Or we can work together. Your choice." Silence stretched over the line. Then, "You have until midnight. 1 shot at a joint strike. After that, all deals are off." Caspar ended the call and turned to his team. "Ilona, get tactical ready. Lev, I want building schematics, guard rotations, everything. We move at midnight." The next hours passed in controlled chaos. Intel flowed in. 47 guards on rotation, 2 escape routes, 1 private elevator. Caspar absorbed it all, building the assault in his mind while his hands cleaned weapons with mechanical precision. "The gala provides cover," he told his strike team. "They'll expect us to avoid civilians. We'll use that. Teams of 4, formal wear, over tactical. Blend in until we locate her." At 11:30, Ilona appeared with Mara's red scarf, retrieved from where she'd dropped it. Caspar took it, running the fabric through his fingers. Then he pressed it briefly to his lips before tucking it into his jacket. "Load up," he ordered, slapping a fresh magazine into his pistol. "We move in 20. The air hummed with lethal purpose as his men geared up. Caspar checked his watch, face carved from stone. In 30 minutes, Price would learn the price of touching what was his. Ilona approached, her own weapons ready. "The feds are in position." "Good." Caspar's voice was winter itself. "Tell them to wait for my signal. When we move fast." The city glowed beyond the windows, oblivious to the storm about to break. In the armory, magazines clicked into place as his strike teams made final preparations. Caspar stood at the window, watching Price's tower pierce the sky like a needle. "Sir?" Lev appeared with an earpiece. "Comms are live. Teams are ready." Caspar took the earpiece, eyes never leaving the distant tower. "Load the vehicles. We roll in 10. The countdown began. 9 minutes until they moved. 8 minutes until he brought hell to Price's door. 7 minutes until he reached her. "Hold on, Mara," he whispered to the night. "I'm coming." The elevator descended, carrying his strike teams to the garage. Engines purred to life as drivers took their positions. In the command center, Lev's screens showed federal units moving into place around the tower's perimeter. 5 minutes. Caspar checked his weapons one final time. Shoulder holster, ankle backup, tactical knife. The Kevlar vest under his dinner jacket felt like familiar armor. 4 minutes. Ilona distributed gala invitations. Perfect forgeries that would get them past the first security check. The plan was simple. Infiltrate in teams, locate Mara, extract her, then let the feds handle cleanup while Caspar dealt with Price personally. 3 minutes. The comms crackled with position checks as his teams reported ready. Outside, a line of black SUVs idled in the garage, engines rumbling with barely contained violence. 2 minutes. Caspar took his place in the lead vehicle, Ilona beside him. The weight of his weapons was reassuring. The memory of Mara's smile was fuel for the fire building in his chest. 1 minute. "All teams, check in," he ordered, voice like steel on stone. The responses came back crisp and professional. They were ready. They were lethal. They were his. "Move out." The SUVs rolled into the night, carrying death to a charity gala. Midnight was coming, and with it, judgment. Thunder rumbled as storm clouds gathered above the city's skyline. In the command van, Lev's fingers flew across keyboards, coordinating the precise moment when darkness would cloak their assault. Caspar checked his watch. 11:57 p.m. "On my mark," he murmured into his comm. Teams were in position, federal agents at the service doors, his men at key points around the tower's perimeter, Ilona and Lev by the freight elevator. At exactly midnight, Lev killed the power. The tower's gleaming facade went dark, plunging the gala into chaos. Emergency lights sputtered weakly as Caspar moved through the service entrance with 2 of his most trusted men, their steps silent on the concrete stairs. In the ballroom 12 floors below, panic erupted. The music died mid-note, replaced by startled exclamations and the sound of breaking glass. Security. Guards rushed to contain the situation, not realizing they were being systematically isolated and neutralized by agents mixing through the crowd. Ilona and Lev ascended in the freight elevator, having hotwired its backup power. Through their earpieces came the controlled chaos of the operation. Teams reporting positions, targets acquired, areas secured. Upstairs in the glass office, Holmes' grip tightened on Mara's arm as the lights failed. "Time to move," he growled, dragging her toward a maintenance corridor. But Mara had been waiting for this moment, Her fingers closed around the broken stem of a champagne flute she'd concealed hours ago when they'd brought her drinks to calm her nerves. As Holm pulled her through the doorway, she twisted and slashed. The jagged glass bit deep into his wrist. He cursed and released her, blood spraying the wall. Mara bolted for the stairwell, her heart thundering in her chest. A guard appeared at the top of the stairs, weapon raised. Before he could fire, a single shot cracked through the air. The guard crumpled, revealing Casper on the landing below, gun still raised, eyes locked on Mara with fierce intensity. "Down!" he shouted as Benton emerged from the shadows, his own weapon trained on Mara's back. Casper moved without hesitation, putting himself between them as Benton's shot rang out. The bullet slammed into Casper's shoulder, spinning him halfway around. But even as he turned, his return fire was precise. One shot that caught Benton's center mass and sent him crashing through the glass wall of the office in a shower of crystalline shards. "Price is moving to the roof," Ilona's voice crackled through the comm. "He's called for aerial extraction." "Cut him off," Casper ordered, pressing his hand against his bleeding shoulder. "Mara, stay with me." They climbed the final flights to the roof access, where rain had begun to fall. Emergency floodlights cast harsh shadows across the helipad where Price stood, phone in hand, watching the sky for his escape route. Casper and Ilona emerged from opposite sides of the roof, weapons trained. The wind whipped Mara's hair as she stayed in the doorway, watching the man who'd orchestrated her mother's destruction face his judgment. "It's over, Price," Casper called over the rising storm. "Your operation is burned. Your people are in custody. The real ledger is with the feds." Price's laugh was bitter. "Nothing's over until I say it is. You really think—" "You have one chance," Caspar cut him off. "Stand down, face the courts, or don't." Lightning flashed, illuminating the desperate calculation in Price's eyes. His hand twitched toward his jacket. Casper's shot was clean and final. Price's body hit the helipad as thunder rolled overhead, almost drowning out the sirens wailing from the streets below. Ilona secured the scene while Casper turned to Mara, holstering his weapon. Blood darkened his suit jacket, but his eyes were clear and steady as he dropped to one knee. Before her. "You changed everything," he said softly. "What I'm willing to do. What I'm allowed to be." His hand reached for hers. "You're mine. But only if you choose it." Rain streaked Mara's face as she looked at this dangerous man who'd remade himself for her, who'd taken a bullet without hesitation, who was offering her a choice when he could have simply taken. She stepped forward and caught his face between her palms, her touch an answer and a claiming all at once. Below them, federal agents swarmed the building, securing evidence and suspects. But on the roof, in the rain, there was only this: two people choosing each other despite everything that should have kept them apart. "Sir," Ilona called from the helipad, "Task Force needs your statement." Casper stood, keeping one hand linked with Mara's. "They can wait 5 minutes." He touched her cheek gently. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered. "You got here in time." His eyes darkened at the memory of how close it had been. "Always," he promised. "I'll always get to you in time." The door burst open as medical teams arrived to treat his shoulder. Casper submitted to their ministrations without releasing Mara's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist as if reassuring himself she was really there. Lev appeared with a tablet showing feeds from throughout the building, federal agents leading away Holm and other conspirators in handcuffs, forensics teams cataloging evidence, the gala guests being escorted to safety. "Building's secure," he reported. "Task Force has everything they need for prosecution." Lightning flashed again, followed by thunder that seemed to shake the tower itself. In its wake, the rain fell harder, but Mara barely noticed. She was watching Casper, the way he managed his teams one-handed, the controlled power in his movements, the gentleness in his eyes when they met hers. She had chosen. And for the first time since her mother's death, she felt truly, completely safe. 3 weeks passed, like water flowing downstream, each day washing away more of the old order. In a high-rise office that still smelled of fresh paint, Mara reviewed shipping manifests while rain tapped against the windows. The letterhead was new: Community Relief Network. But the warehouses and trucks were familiar, repurposed from Casper's former empire. "The permit's cleared for the Thompson Street shelter," Ilona announced, stepping into the office. She wore a tailored suit now, her security firm's logo subtle on her lapel pin. "Construction starts Monday." Mara nodded, marking the date in her calendar. "Did the panic devices arrive for staff training?" Tomorrow, I'll run the sessions myself. Ilona's expression softened slightly. You're doing good work here. Through the glass walls, Mara could see Lev in the tech suite across the hall, teaching shelter staff to use the new tracking system. His federal handlers had been surprised by his dedication to the immunity deal, but Mara wasn't. Like, all of them. He'd found purpose in rebuilding. Her phone buzzed. Kaspar, confirming their evening plans. She smiled at his careful formality, so different from the man who'd once commanded empires. These days, he spent more time in boardrooms than back alleys, converting his remaining legitimate holdings into foundations and trusts. The transition hadn't been smooth. There were still nights when he woke reaching for weapons that weren't there, days when the weight of change pressed hard against old instincts. But he chose, again and again, to push through, just as she chose every day to trust in this new future they were building. The task force called, Ilona said, drawing Mara back to the present. They've arrested 3 more officials named in the ledger. Price's network is almost completely dismantled. Mara touched the locket at her throat. Repaired now, its secrets exposed, but its meaning transformed. My mother would have wanted this. Not just justice, but change. Real help for people who need it. She'd spent the first week after everything working with trauma counselors, processing her own grief while helping to establish support services for others. Kaspar had given her space when she needed it, presence when she asked, and always, always choice. The afternoon light was fading when she finished reviewing the day's reports. Outside, the city gleamed wet and clean in the persistent rain. Mara gathered her coat and umbrella, nodding to the security team, Ilona's people now, as she headed for the elevator. The church looked different in the growing dark, its stone facade softened by new streetlights and fresh paint. The clinic next door, her clinic, funded by Kaspar's voluntary forfeitures, was just closing for the day. Through the windows, she could see staff tidying up, preparing for tomorrow's patients. Kaspar waited beneath a black umbrella, his injured shoulder still held slightly careful, but healing well. He'd come straight from a board meeting, his suit impeccable, but his eyes were warm as they found hers. Good day? He asked as she approached. Productive. Yours? The foundation approved funding for 3 more clinics. He offered his arm, and she took it, letting him shelter her from the rain. Lev's background checks on the new staff came back clean. They walked slowly, sharing the umbrella. Behind them, Ilona followed, at a distance that gave privacy while maintaining protection. Old habits transformed into new comfort. I have something to ask you, Kaspar said after a moment. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Not because you need it, not because I want to keep you, because I choose you, and I hope you'll choose me too. Inside the box was a ring, elegant but not ostentatious, and beneath it a deed with both their names. An apartment, he explained, overlooking the park, your name first on all the paperwork. No strings, no obligations, just possibility. Mara studied his face in the rain-washed light. This dangerous man who'd learned gentleness, this killer who'd chosen to protect instead of destroy, who'd given up empire for the chance to be better. Yes, she said simply. To both. His smile was swift and real as he slipped the ring onto her finger. They resumed walking, but now Mara leaned closer, sharing his warmth. The shelter on 4th Street called, she told him. Their first group of residents moves in next week. Real beds, job training programs, everything we promised. Everything you made happen, he corrected gently. I just provided resources. You're the one who knew how to use them, right? They passed the spot where she'd first found him bleeding in the rain. The memory no longer carried fear. It had become simply the first step on a path neither of them could have predicted. Ilona's team finished screening the new clinic security staff, Kaspar continued. They'll start training on Monday, and the task force says they're close to closing the last of Price's overseas accounts. It feels real now, Mara said softly. All of it. The changes, the plans, the future we're building. They reached the corner where his car waited, but neither moved to get in immediately. Instead, they stood together under the umbrella, watching the city move around them. Not a battlefield anymore, but a community slowly healing its wounds. I love you, Kaspar said, the words still new enough to carry weight, but familiar enough to feel like truth. Not because you saved me that night, because you show me every day how to be someone worth choosing. Mara reached up to touch his face, this intimate gesture now as natural as breathing. I love you too, not because you protected me, because you gave me the power to protect myself and others." They got into the car, Ilona taking her usual place in the front seat. As they drove through the rain-slicked streets, Mara watched her city transform from a hunting ground into something else entirely. A home they were remaking, hour by hour, choice by choice,